Where did you get that necklace? The Mafia boss grabbed her wrist. You knew her. After 10 years. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. The night was thick with anticipation, the kind of heavy air you only get in New York City just before it rains. Isabella stood in front of the glass doors of the private gallery, her hand adjusting the strap of her dress as she took in the grand sight before her. The gala, as usual, was packed with the city's elite. The chandeliers overhead twinkled like stars caught in glass, their reflections shimmering on the polished marble floor. Yet, for all the luxury surrounding her, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at her. She'd been working double shifts all week, just to make ends meet, and tonight was supposed to be a break from her hectic life. But somehow, it didn't feel like a night to unwind. As she moved through the crowd, her tray balanced precariously in her hands. She found herself at a table where an influential business mogul was discussing his latest venture with a few guests. She couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation about millions of dollars changing hands, the kind of talk that made her feel out of place. But she kept her head down, smiled at the guests, and refilled their drinks. Then it happened. She glanced up, instinctively, and her eyes locked with a pair of cold, calculating ones. His gaze was so intense, it felt as if he was looking right through her. He was tall, with dark hair that seemed perfectly styled despite the humid air, and his suit looked expensive, far more than anything she'd ever worn. But it wasn't just his appearance that made her heart skip. It was the authority he exuded. He wasn't just a wealthy man. He was someone who commanded attention the moment he entered a room. He didn't smile at her, nor did he speak immediately. But the way his eyes lingered on her, scanning her from head to toe, made her feel like an object, not a person. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the tray. She quickly averted her gaze, but it was too late. He'd already begun walking toward her, his movements smooth, controlled, and unhurried. Every person in his path instinctively stepped aside. She froze. You dropped something, he said, his voice low, with a slight accent she couldn't quite place. The words should have felt like nothing more than a passing comment, but in his presence, they felt like a command. Excuse me, Isabella replied, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. This necklace, he said, his gaze shifting to the delicate silver chain around her neck. Isabella's heart stopped. How could he know about the necklace? It had been a gift, something from a time long ago, from someone she hadn't thought about in years. She quickly reached up to touch the chain, trying to mask her surprise. I don't know what you mean, she stammered, hoping to play it off. But he wasn't buying it. He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he could see through her attempt to lie. You know exactly what I mean. His hand moved out, not to grab her wrist, but to rest lightly on the chain itself, his fingers brushing against her skin. Where did you get that necklace? His tone was so direct, so deliberate, that it sent a chill down her spine. Isabella's thoughts scrambled. The necklace had been her mother's, passed down to her as a child. But how could he know that? And why did it seem like this was more than just a chance encounter? She quickly pulled back, trying to regain some composure. I don't know what you're talking about, she repeated, though she could feel the unease growing inside her. I think you do, he said, his voice suddenly colder, the smile never quite reaching his eyes. You and I have some unfinished business. His words sent a shock through her, like a cold wave washing over her. Unfinished business? What did he mean? Isabella could feel the eyes of the room on her, but none of them dared to intervene. The man stepped back, but his presence remained, overwhelming, suffocating. As he turned to leave, he dropped a business card on the table. I'll be seeing you again, Miss Santos. Be ready. Isabella stood there, frozen in place, staring at the card he left behind. The name on it was unfamiliar, yet somehow, it felt like a warning. What had she just stepped into? And why did she feel like she was about to lose control of her own life? The night dragged on after the incident with the man at the gala, but for Isabella, the hours felt like days. She couldn't stop thinking about the encounter, about the way his eyes had locked onto her and how his words had sent an ice-cold shiver down her spine. What unfinished business could he possibly be referring to? She tossed and turned in bed, the neon lights from the city below casting faint shadows across the room. The necklace around her neck felt heavier now, almost as if it had its own secrets to reveal. But she knew, deep down, that it was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a link to a past she had buried, to a memory she had long tried to forget. The next morning, as the sun barely peeked through the blinds, Isabella decided to take the card left by the man and investigate. The name on it read Aleandro Romano, with an address listed in the Upper East Side. The sleek black lettering seemed to stand out on the pristine white card, almost like a warning. She had no idea why she was even considering contacting him, but something in her gut told her she had no choice. Whatever this man knew, whatever he had been looking for, it was all somehow tied to her, and the more she resisted, the more tangled she would become in his web. After a long pause, she picked up her phone and dialed the number. It rang 3 times before the deep, calm voice of Aleandro Romano answered. "Miss Santos, I was wondering when you would call," he said, as if he had been expecting her. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. "How did you know it was me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew you would come. I had hoped it would be sooner, but I understand your hesitation," Aleandro replied smoothly. "We need to talk. In person. I'm at my office. On the Upper East Side. I'll have someone pick you up." His tone was firm but not unkind, and there was an undeniable authority in his voice that made Isabella's pulse quicken. "I'm not sure I understand what you want from me," Isabella said, trying to maintain some composure. "You'll understand when you arrive." "I'm sure of it," Aleandro responded, before ending the call. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she hung up the phone. She didn't know what to expect when she met him, but a sense of unease lingered in her chest. But she knew she had no other choice. This was the only way to get answers. As she prepared to leave, Isabella's thoughts swirled around the man who had appeared out of nowhere, the dark figure who seemed to have everything figured out. Was he truly a mafia boss? And if so, what did he want from her? She had been so focused on making ends meet, on surviving each day, that she had never thought about the secrets her family might be hiding. What did Aleandro know about her past? And why was he so interested in the necklace she had been given as a child? It wasn't until she stepped into the sleek black car that arrived outside her apartment that her mind began to race even more. The driver didn't speak as they made their way to the Upper East Side, the silence in the car thick with tension. The city passed by in a blur, the towering buildings and bustling streets becoming a distant memory as the car drove deeper into a world she had never been part of. When they finally arrived, Isabella's eyes widened in awe. The building was a towering structure of glass and steel, its modern design standing in stark contrast to the more traditional buildings surrounding it. She had expected wealth, but not this. It felt like stepping into another world entirely. The doorman opened the door for her and escorted her into the building. The lobby was grand, with high ceilings, marble floors, and sculptures that looked like they belonged in an art museum. "Miss Santos," a voice called out from behind her. Isabella turned to see a man in a dark suit standing at the entrance of a hallway. It was Aleandro. He stepped forward, his presence dominating the room. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, it felt like time stood still. He was even more imposing in person than he had been on the phone. "Welcome to my world," Aleandro said, his voice low and smooth, the words carrying a weight that sent a ripple of tension through her. As she followed him down the hallway, Isabella tried to steady her breath. The whole situation felt surreal, like she was walking in someone else's shoes. The farther they went, the more she felt like an outsider in this strange, unfamiliar world. Aleandro stopped in front of a large set of double doors and opened them. Inside was a lavish office with a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was sleek and modern, and the walls were lined with expensive art. Aleandro motioned for her to sit, and she did, her nerves on edge. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "There's something I need to explain. Something about your past, your family, and how it ties into what I do." Isabella's heart skipped a beat. The truth was coming, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to hear it. "What do you know about me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Aleandro leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. More than you realize, he said. More than anyone should. But you've been in danger for a long time, Isabella. Your family's secrets have a price, and now, it's time to settle that debt. Isabella felt her heartbeat echo through the silence of the office as Aleandro's words hung in the air. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pulling closer, the weight of his stare pressing down on her like gravity itself. She swallowed hard, her fingers instinctively brushing the necklace at her throat. It felt warm, almost pulsing against her skin, as if it held its own breath. Aleandro watched the small movement with unsettling intensity. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished surface of the desk. His voice dropped lower, quieter, as if he were choosing every word with surgical precision. That necklace is not just an inheritance, he said. It belonged to someone who mattered to me. Someone who should still be alive. A chill slid through Isabella's spine. I do not understand, she said, though her voice wavered. I have had it since I was a child. My mother gave it to me. It is all I know. Aleandro shook his head slowly, almost sorrowfully. Your mother did not give it to you. It was placed on you the night everything changed. The night you disappeared. Isabella blinked, stunned. Disappeared? I grew up in Queens. I have never disappeared. You were not always in Queens, Aleandro replied, his tone sharp enough to cut. You were somewhere else. With someone else. And then you were gone. Isabella felt anger rising beneath her confusion. You are not making any sense, she said. I think you have the wrong person. But Aleandro only stared at her with a look she could not decipher, a mixture of grief, suspicion, and something darker. Your name was not always Isabella Santos, he said. And that necklace was not meant to ever leave my family. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Why would you think that I am connected to any of this? She asked. Aleandro stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. He walked to a drawer, opened it, and returned with a photograph. He placed it gently in front of her. Look, he said. Isabella hesitated before pulling the photograph closer. Her breath caught. 2 children stood in the picture, a boy and a girl, both around 8 years old. The boy had Aleandro's eyes, sharp and stormy. The girl had a soft smile, dark hair, and on her neck, the necklace. The same one Isabella was wearing. That is my sister, Aleandro said quietly. Her name was Bianca Romano. She disappeared 10 years ago. The only thing left behind was that necklace. Isabella stared at the girl in the photograph. Something inside her twisted. A pressure behind her eyes. A flicker of something. A memory she could not quite reach. I do not know this girl, Isabella whispered. I have never met her. I wish that were true, Aleandro replied. But you hesitated before you said it. She looked up sharply. I hesitated because I am overwhelmed. This is insane. You are accusing me of being someone missing for 10 years. I was in Queens. I was with my mother. Her voice faltered. Her mother. Her mother who never let her talk about her early childhood. Her mother who always changed the subject when Isabella asked questions. Her mother who died before she could explain anything at all. Aleandro's gaze hardened. Your mother was not your biological mother, Isabella. She took you. She hid you. And she hid the truth. Isabella felt as if the floor beneath her tilted. She grabbed the armrest of the chair to steady herself. You cannot just say things like that, she whispered. You cannot just decide that I am someone else. I did not decide, Aleandro said. I investigated. I looked into your records. The first 4 years of your life are unaccounted for. There are no medical files. No school entries. Nothing until the foster placement on record in Queens. And that necklace is custom-made. A one-of-a-kind piece. Isabella's chest tightened. Panic rose in her throat like a wave she could not outrun. I do not want this, she said quietly. I came here for answers, not to be told that my entire life is a lie. Aleandro's expression softened for the first time, but only slightly. The truth is rarely gentle, he said, but it is better than living in a shadow. She looked at him, tears burning behind her eyes. What do you want from me? He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to know who you are. I want to know what happened to my sister. And I need you to remember, Isabella. The room felt suddenly colder, the city lights flickering through the windows like distant stars. Isabella closed her eyes, and an image flashed in her mind. A hallway. A scream. A hand pulling her. The weight of a necklace around her small neck. She gasped, gripping the arms of the chair. Aleandro saw it. His voice sharpened. What did you see? She shook her head, breath shaky. I do not know. It was nothing. It was just a flash. It was a memory, Aleandro said. And there will be more. He moved back to his desk. You are not leaving until we find the truth. Isabella stared at him, realizing with a sinking feeling that she had stepped into something she could no longer walk away from. She was trapped between a past she could not remember and a man who refused to let her forget. Isabella sat in stunned silence as Aleandro's words settled over her like a heavy fog. She had come here seeking answers, but instead, she was drowning in a sea of confusion, fear, and doubt. The pieces of the puzzle that she had long kept locked away were suddenly being forced into place, each one more painful and more terrifying than the last. She had never asked for this. She had never wanted to know the truth about her past, about the secrets her mother had kept from her. But here, in Aleandro's opulent office, surrounded by power and wealth, the truth seemed inevitable, like a storm waiting to break. Aleandro's gaze remained fixed on her, his eyes not unkind, but unyielding. You will remember, Isabella, he said softly, his voice like a low hum of electricity. Your mind has blocked it out, but the pieces are there. I will help you find them. Isabella recoiled at his words. Help her? She had never asked for his help. She had never asked to be pulled into his world. I don't want to remember, she said, her voice hoarse with emotion. I just want to be left alone. I've built a life for myself. I've moved on. I don't want to go back to whatever it is you're talking about. Aleandro's expression softened, but his eyes remained intense. You don't have a choice, he said, his tone gentle but firm. What you don't understand is that your past is intertwined with mine. You cannot escape it. You never could. Isabella's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She whispered, her throat tight. Aleandro stood and walked to the large windows that overlooked the city. The lights of New York shimmered beneath the night sky, a city of endless possibilities and hidden dangers. You were never just some orphan from Queens, he said, his voice distant as if he were speaking to himself. You were a part of something much bigger. Your family had ties to mine, ties to the business I run. Isabella felt a cold chill creep down her spine. My family, she echoed, her mind reeling. What do you mean? My mother, her voice faltered. Your mother wasn't just a woman who took you in, Aleandro interrupted, turning to face her. She was part of a larger network. She worked with people who were connected to my family. Your mother's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was part of a much darker story. And you, Isabella, are part of that story. The weight of his words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Her mother had never spoken of her past, never mentioned anything about a connection to the Mafia. She had always told Isabella that she had adopted her when she was a baby, that her biological family had been lost in some tragic accident. But this was a whole new reality. No, Isabella whispered, shaking her head. This isn't possible. My mother was just a nurse. She worked long hours. She wasn't involved in any of this. Aleandro's gaze softened slightly. I know it's hard to believe, Isabella. It's hard to accept. But the truth is right in front of you. Your mother tried to protect you from all of it. She tried to hide you away, but she couldn't. You were always meant to be part of this world, whether she wanted it or not. Isabella stood up suddenly, her legs shaky beneath her. I don't want any part of this, she said, her voice shaking with anger. I don't want anything to do with you or your family. I don't care about your Mafia or your business. Aleandro's expression hardened. You don't have a choice, Isabella. You never did. This is your fate. You are connected to me, to us, and there's nothing you can do to change that. His words echoed in her mind, like a drumbeat that grew louder with every passing second. There was nowhere to run, no way to escape. This was her life now, whether she liked it or not. Isabella's mind raced, her thoughts spiraling out of control. She had to get out of here. She had to leave. But as she turned to leave the room, Aleandro spoke again. You will be safe here, Isabella, he said, his voice calm but filled with an underlying command. But you need to understand one thing. You are mine now. You are under my protection, and no one will harm you as long as you are with me. Isabella stopped dead in her tracks, her heart racing. She didn't know if she could trust him. She didn't know if she could trust anyone in this world. But one thing was certain. She was tangled in something far deeper than she could ever have imagined. And there was no turning back now. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. What do you want from me? She asked her. Voice barely a whisper. Aleandro's lips curled into a small, enigmatic smile. I want you to remember, he said softly. I want you to understand your place in all of this. And when you do, when you remember everything, you will see that we are not so different, you and I. Isabella's mind reeled with confusion. What does that even mean? It means, Aleandro replied, his eyes cold and calculating, that you are my responsibility now, and I will not let you go until I get what I want. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine as he stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. She was trapped in a world she didn't belong to, surrounded by people who knew far too much about her past. She had come here looking for answers, but instead, she had opened a door that led to a darkness she wasn't sure she could survive. Isabella couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this trapped. Every time she tried to escape the weight of Aleandro's words, they returned to her with even greater force, settling in her chest like a constant, suffocating pressure. She had tried to convince herself that none of this was real, that there had to be some misunderstanding, some twisted game being played. But no matter how hard she tried, the truth seemed to creep closer, unraveling her carefully constructed life. She had come here for answers, but all she had found was more confusion. Aleandro wasn't wrong. She wasn't sure when it had happened, but she knew in the pit of her stomach that he was telling the truth. Her mother had kept secrets, dark ones, and now it was time for Isabella to face the consequences. As the days passed, Isabella found herself spending more time in Aleandro's world, not by choice but by necessity. He had insisted that she stay at his estate, and the thought of being alone in a city where she was no longer sure of her identity terrified her. So, she reluctantly agreed. The mansion was more than she could have ever imagined. It was grand, with marble floors that seemed to stretch for miles, and art adorning the walls that was worth more than she could ever dream of earning. But it felt empty, cold, despite the opulence surrounding her. Aleandro, however, seemed to thrive in this environment. He moved with confidence, every step calculated, as if he were completely in control of the world around him. His eyes, however, betrayed a deeper layer, something far more dangerous than what he let on. Isabella could see it in the way he watched her, as if he were waiting for something. But what? What was he waiting for? As the days turned into weeks, Isabella tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She spent her time reading, wandering the estate, and avoiding Aleandro as much as possible. But every time she tried to pull away, he found a way to pull her back in. He would show up unannounced, standing in doorways with that same unreadable expression, his eyes always searching, always probing, as if he could see right through her. "You're not being honest with me," he said one afternoon, catching her off guard as she tried to sneak out to the garden. Isabella froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaky. "You think I don't know when you're lying?" Aleandro's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it that made her skin prickle. "You're hiding something, Isabella, and I will find out what it is." She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I'm not hiding anything," she said, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "You think I don't know the games you play?" Aleandro said, stepping closer. "You're afraid to face the truth, afraid to accept who you really are." Isabella took a step back, her mind spinning. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, feeling her resolve slipping away. Aleandro's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "I want you to remember," he said, his voice low. "I want you to understand everything. Your mother's secrets, your place in all of this. I want you to see the truth." Isabella shook her head, her thoughts a whirlwind. "No," she said, her voice firm now, though her heart was racing. "I can't do this. I can't live in this world." Aleandro didn't say anything for a long moment, and Isabella felt the silence stretch between them, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he spoke again, his voice colder than before. "You don't have a choice, Isabella," he said, his tone final. "You are already in this world, and there's no way out." Isabella's pulse quickened, her chest tightening with panic. "What do you mean?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "You're mine now," Aleandro said simply, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Isabella froze, the words cutting through her like ice. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've already told you, Isabella," Aleandro said, stepping even closer, his presence overwhelming. "You are mine. You always have been. The words hung in the air like a threat. She tried to step back, but he moved with a fluidity that left no room for escape. His gaze never wavered, and the chill in his eyes sent a wave of fear coursing through her veins. "You don't have to like it," he said, his voice softer now, but no less intense. "But it's the truth, and it's time you accepted it." Isabella's mind raced as she tried to process what he was saying. She had been drawn into his world, whether she liked it or not. Her past was a tangled mess of lies and secrets, and Aleandro was at the center of it all. And now, it seemed, she was a part of it too. "I don't want this," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't ask for any of this." Aleandro's gaze softened slightly, though the intensity never left his eyes. "I know," he said quietly, "but it's too late now. You're already here." Isabella felt a tear slip down her cheek, but she wiped it away quickly, furious with herself for showing weakness. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Remember," he said simply, "the truth is buried inside you, Isabella. And when you find it, everything will change." She stared at him, fear and confusion swirling in her chest. The truth? What truth? And why was Aleandro so sure that she could remember something that felt like a lifetime ago? She didn't know if she could trust him, but she had no choice. She had to find the answers, even if they tore everything apart. Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that she was suffocating. Every conversation with Aleandro seemed to pull her deeper into a world she wasn't ready for. His words, calm yet forceful, were like invisible chains, tightening around her with each passing day. He had told her that her past was intertwined with his, that her mother's secrets were buried somewhere deep within her, waiting to be uncovered. But each attempt to remember felt like a futile battle against something she couldn't control. It had been a week since Aleandro's declaration that she was his responsibility, and despite her resistance, she had found herself spending more time at his mansion. The estate was massive, more like a fortress than a home, with its high walls, hidden security, and rooms that seemed to stretch endlessly. It felt like a place designed to keep people in, not out. Isabella couldn't help but wonder if this was what her mother had wanted for her. Would she have wanted her to live in a gilded cage, surrounded by power and danger? Every corner of the mansion felt like it was watching her, with its cold, sterile beauty and its air of danger. Aleandro, on the other hand, seemed completely at home here, moving effortlessly through the halls as if he owned the world. And in many ways, he did. Every day, he would find her, corner her, and remind her that she was not the person she thought she was. Every interaction with him left her feeling more exposed, more vulnerable than she ever thought possible. She had always thought she knew who she was, that her life was hers to control. But now, with Aleandro in her life, everything had changed. Everything she had known was slowly slipping away. One evening, she found herself in his office once again, standing by the large window overlooking the city. Aleandro was seated at his desk, his posture commanding, as always. He didn't say anything at first, just watched her as she stood there, lost in thought. "I don't understand why you won't just tell me everything," she said, finally breaking the silence. "Why is this all so cryptic?" Aleandro's gaze softened, but there was a hardness in his eyes that still lingered. "You're not ready for the truth yet," he said, his voice low but firm. "But you will be. When the time comes, you'll understand everything." "And what if I don't want to understand?" Isabella shot back, her voice shaky with emotion. "What if I don't want any part of this life? What if I want to forget all of it?" Aleandro stood, walking over to her with deliberate steps. He was close now, his presence overwhelming. "You can't forget, Isabella. It's not that simple. You've always known who you are, even if you didn't want to admit it. The truth is inside you, and it will come out." "I don't know who I am," Isabella whispered, her voice trembling. "All I know is that I'm lost. I don't belong here." Aleandro reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You belong here more than you think," he said softly. "Your place has always been here, whether you knew it or not." His words struck her like a slap to the face. She wanted to pull away, to run, but something in her chest told her that no matter where she went, she would never escape the truth. That truth was tied to her in ways she couldn't understand, and Aleandro knew it. The reality of it was suffocating, like a thick fog she couldn't push through. "I don't want to be part of your world," she said, taking a step back. I want to live my own life. I want to forget all of this. Forget you. Forget your family. Aleandro's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. You can't escape it, Isabella. You can run, but the past will always find you. And when it does, you'll come back. You'll come back to me. The certainty in his voice made Isabella's heart race. She didn't know why, but she believed him. She had always believed she was in control of her life. But now, with Aleandro's words echoing in her mind, she realized how little control she really had. She was tied to this world, whether she liked it or not. And as much as she hated it, as much as she wanted to fight against it, part of her couldn't deny the connection she felt. She had been running from the truth for so long, but it was catching up with her, and there was nowhere to hide. Why did you have to come into my life? She whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. Why couldn't you just leave me alone? Aleandro's eyes softened, but there was still an edge to his gaze. I never wanted to hurt you, Isabella, he said quietly. But I'm not leaving you. You belong to me. And in time, you will understand why. Isabella felt a pang in her chest, a mixture of anger, fear, and something she couldn't quite identify. Part of her wanted to scream, to fight back, to escape. But another part of her, the part she had buried deep down, was drawn to him. It terrified her. I don't belong to you, she said, her voice shaking with the weight of the words. I'm not yours. Aleandro stepped closer, his presence overwhelming her in a way she couldn't explain. You've always been mine, he said, his voice so low it sent a shiver down her spine. And you always will be. Isabella felt a cold wave wash over her, as if his words had locked her into a reality she couldn't escape. She didn't know how much longer she could deny the truth, how much longer she could fight against the life that was slowly consuming her. But one thing was certain, there was no turning back now. She was in this world, whether she wanted to be or not, and Aleandro was the one holding the keys to her future. Isabella couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Aleandro's face, his eyes, cold and calculating, watching her every move. His words echoed in her mind, and no matter how hard she tried to push them away, they kept coming back. You belong to me. She had never felt more trapped in her life. The mansion, with its cold marble floors and high walls, felt like a prison. She was living in a world that wasn't hers, surrounded by people who were always watching, always waiting. And Aleandro was at the center of it all. She couldn't deny the magnetic pull she felt toward him, no matter how much she hated it. Every interaction with him, no matter how brief, made her heart race. But she also despised him for what he was doing to her. He was breaking her down, piece by piece, forcing her to confront truths she wasn't ready to face. You belong to me. The words rang in her ears like a mantra. She tried to ignore them, to tell herself they didn't mean anything, but deep down, she knew they were true. She was tied to him, and there was no escaping it. Isabella got up from the bed, pacing around the room, her hands trembling. The night was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't live like this. She had to find a way out. But how? She couldn't even trust herself anymore. Her memories, her life before Aleandro, felt like they were slipping through her fingers, like sand in the wind. Her mother had tried to protect her, but had she really? Or had she known all along that this day would come? That Isabella would be dragged back into this world of power, danger, and violence? Isabella grabbed her phone from the nightstand, her fingers hovering over the screen. She thought about calling her old friends, telling them the truth, asking for help. But what could they do? They had no idea what she was up against. And she couldn't risk their lives too. This was her fight now. Her alone. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. She knew who it was. It was always him. Isabella. Aleandro's voice called from the other side. Can we talk? She felt a wave of panic wash over her, but she quickly pushed it down. She couldn't let him see her like this, vulnerable, weak. She had to stay strong, at least on the outside. Go away, she said, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. There was a long pause before Aleandro spoke again. You can't hide from me, Isabella. Not forever. He wasn't wrong. She couldn't hide. Not from him. Not from this life. He was always one step ahead, always knowing where she was, what she was doing. She pressed her palms against the cool glass of the window, staring out into the city. The lights below flickered, but the city felt far away, like a dream. She wanted to be part of it again, wanted to escape the world she was in. But she knew that was impossible. Aleandro was right. She couldn't hide. Not from him. Not from herself. After a long silence, she heard his footsteps move away from the door. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. But the relief was short-lived. She couldn't outrun him. She couldn't outrun the past. She had to face it. She had to face him. The next morning, Isabella found herself standing in front of Aleandro's office door once again, her heart pounding. In her chest. She had tried to avoid this moment, but it was inevitable. She had to go to him. She had to understand why he was doing this to her, why he couldn't let her go. When she walked inside, Aleandro was already waiting, sitting at his desk, his fingers steepled in front of him. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill down her spine. "Sit down," he said, his voice smooth, as if nothing was wrong. "We need to talk." Isabella hesitated for a moment before sitting across from him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She couldn't look at him, not yet. She needed to get control of herself first. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to understand," Aleandro said, leaning forward slightly. "I want you to see the bigger picture. You are not just a victim here, Isabella. You are part of something much larger than you realize." His words made her skin crawl. "I never asked for any of this," she snapped, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I never wanted any of this." Aleandro smiled, a cold, calculating smile that made her blood run cold. "No one ever does," he said softly. "But you are here now, and there is no going back." His words hit her like a physical blow. She felt the weight of them press down on her, crushing her, suffocating her. He was right. There was no going back. She had crossed a line, and now there was no escape. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You will help me," Aleandro replied, his tone final. "You will help me finish what we started. And when you do, you will finally understand why you are here." Isabella's heart raced. "What are you talking about?" she asked, panic rising in her chest. "What did I ever do to deserve this?" Aleandro stood up, walking toward her slowly, his presence looming over her like a storm cloud. "You were always meant to be part of this, Isabella," he said softly. "You were never meant to live a quiet, normal life. Your destiny has always been tied to mine." Isabella felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Her entire world was crumbling, piece by piece, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She had always thought she had control over her life, but now, with Aleandro in the room, she realized how little control she actually had. She was already trapped, and there was no way out. Isabella's heart was pounding in her chest as Aleandro's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. She had never felt so helpless, so caught in a web of lies and truth she didn't know how to escape from. His presence in the room felt suffocating, and every word he spoke was a reminder of how little control she had left over her own life. She had come here, hoping to find answers, but all she had found was a deeper mystery, one that pulled her further into a world she didn't belong to. Aleandro's gaze never wavered as he watched her, his eyes cold and calculating. He was right. She couldn't deny it anymore. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. "You think I'm a prisoner here, don't you?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling, though she tried to mask the fear that gripped her heart. Aleandro didn't answer immediately. He simply stepped closer, his presence overwhelming her in a way that made her stomach twist with unease. "No," he said after a long pause, his voice soft but filled with an edge that made her blood run cold. "You're not a prisoner, Isabella. You're much more than that. You're a part of something much bigger than you could ever have imagined. Something you've been running from your whole life." She shook her head, her hands trembling at her sides. "I don't want any part of this," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't ask for this. I just want to go back to my life, to my normal life. I just want to forget all of this." Aleandro's lips curled into a slight smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You can't go back," he said, his voice laced with finality. "You never could. The moment you stepped into this world, there was no turning back. You belong here now, whether you want to or not." Isabella recoiled, her heart racing as she struggled to breathe. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "I don't belong here. I'm not like you. I'm not like your family. I don't want this life." Aleandro stepped even closer, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "You don't have to be like us to be part of this world," he said quietly. "You already are. You always have been. And whether you like it or not, you'll play your part." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to accept your place," Aleandro said, his tone calm but unwavering. "You're not just some innocent bystander. You're part of this. You always have been. And you will help me finish what we started." "I don't even know what you're talking about," she said, her voice breaking as panic surged inside her. "What did I ever do to deserve this? I don't know anything about your family, about your business. I don't want any part of it." Aleandro's expression hardened. "You don't have to understand right now," he said coldly. "But you will. Soon enough, you'll see exactly why you're here. Why you belong to me. It's all connected." Isabella could feel the walls closing in on her. She had been trying to ignore the truth, pretending that she could escape this world. But now, with Aleandro standing in front of her, there was no denying it. She was already too deep in. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. "Now," Aleandro said, his gaze never leaving hers, "you remember. You remember everything. Your past. Your connection to my family. And when you do, you'll understand why you're here, why this is where you're meant to be." Isabella's head was spinning. She didn't want to remember. She didn't want to know the truth. The truth was too dangerous, too painful. But deep down, she knew that Aleandro was right. She couldn't escape. She couldn't run anymore. He had already claimed her, body and soul. She was bound to this life, whether she wanted it or not. "I can't do this," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't be a part of this world. I can't be a part of your family." Aleandro's gaze softened, though there was still a hardness in his eyes. "You already are," he said quietly. "And when you remember, when you accept your place in all of this, you'll see that this is where you were always meant to be. You're mine, Isabella. And that's never going to change." Isabella took a step back, her mind racing. She wanted to scream, to break free, to run as far away as possible. But she knew it was pointless. There was no escape. She had already been pulled into this world, into his world. And now, there was no turning back. She was his. And he was never going to let her go. As she turned to leave the room, Aleandro's voice stopped her. "You'll come back to me," he said, his voice steady, as if there were no question about it. "You can't run from what's inside you. You will remember, Isabella. And when you do, you'll come back to me." Isabella's heart sank. She had always believed she was in control of her life, that she could choose her own path. But now, with Aleandro's words hanging in the air, she realized just how wrong she had been. She had no control. She was trapped, bound to him, and to the past she couldn't remember. And no matter how much she fought, she knew in her heart that she would never truly escape. Isabella wandered through the long hallway of the mansion, her footsteps soft against the polished floor, but every sound echoed in her head like a warning. Her thoughts chased each other in circles, each one more suffocating than the last. She had tried to run from Aleandro's world, tried to cling to the life she once knew, but that world felt farther away with each passing day. The city lights outside the window seemed distant now, like a memory she could barely touch. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to quiet the storm raging inside her. She could still hear his voice, calm yet relentless, repeating the same haunting words. "You will remember. You will come back to me." Isabella wanted to scream. She wanted to deny everything, to push away the truth Aleandro kept insisting she face. But there was something inside her, something deep and buried, that trembled at the edge of her mind. A whisper, a shadow, a memory. She hated it. She hated how her body reacted before her mind could catch up, how her heart raced every time Aleandro walked into the room, how his voice sent chills down her spine, not from fear alone, but from something else, something she refused to name. She reached the end of the hall and pushed open the door to the garden. The night air was crisp, cool against her skin, and she breathed deeply, hoping the world outside would clear her mind. But even here, she felt his presence. The garden lights cast a soft glow across the stone path, and the roses that lined it seemed too perfect, too carefully maintained, just like everything else in this place. Everything was under control here. Everything belonged to him. Isabella sat on the stone bench and buried her face in her hands. She could not deny it anymore. She was changing. This place was changing her. Aleandro was changing her. And the worst part was that she did not know if she could stop it. A faint memory flickered in her mind, so quick she almost missed it. A voice. A hand grabbing hers. A necklace pressed into her palm. A woman whispering, "Run." Isabella gasped and lifted her head. The memory was gone as quickly as it came, but it left a sharp pain in her chest. Someone had told her to run. Someone had warned her. Who was it? Her real mother? Someone else from the world she had forgotten? She stood up quickly, breathing hard. She needed answers. She could not keep living in the dark. She marched back inside, her footsteps faster than before. She needed to find Aleandro. She needed him to tell her everything, not just the pieces he wanted her to know. She reached his office door and hesitated for a moment before knocking. Her hand was trembling, but she pushed the door open anyway. Aleandro was standing by the window, his back to her. He turned at the sound, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharpened the moment they met hers. "Isabella," he said slowly, as if tasting the tension radiating off her. "You are shaking." "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice unsteady but determined. "All of it. Not the pieces you choose. Not the parts that fit your plan. I want the whole truth." Aleandro studied her closely, his gaze moving from her trembling hands to her face. "You are remembering, aren't you?" Her breath caught. "Something," she admitted. "Just fragments. But I need to understand what they mean." Aleandro walked toward her, his steps measured, his eyes never leaving her. "Once you know everything," he said quietly, "there is no going back." "I already have no way back," Isabella whispered. "You made sure of that." Something shifted in his eyes, something dark and conflicted. But he did not deny it. "Sit," he said, motioning toward the chair across from his desk. She obeyed, her heart beating hard against her ribs. Aleandro sat as well, but he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, closer to her than he had ever been during these conversations. "Your mother was not supposed to take you," he began. "You were meant to stay with my family. You were meant to grow up with us. But she ran with you. She hid you." Isabella felt her stomach twist. Why would she do that? Aleandro's eyes darkened. "Because she witnessed something she was not meant to see. Something dangerous. Something that involved my family. And she knew they would come for her." Isabella swallowed hard. "So she took me. To protect me." "Yes," Aleandro said. "But she could not erase everything. Not your memories. Not your connection to us. And now it is catching up to you." Isabella's breathing quickened. Her hands gripped the sides of the chair. What did she see? Aleandro hesitated for the first time. It unnerved her. "You are not ready for that," he said quietly. "But you will be soon." "Stop telling me I am not ready." Isabella cried, her voice breaking. "I deserve to know. It is my life." Aleandro's voice rose, sharper than she had ever heard it. "It is not just your life, Isabella. It is mine too. It has always been mine." Silence crashed between them. Isabella's pulse thundered in her ears. "Why?" she whispered. "Why does my life matter so much to you?" Aleandro leaned closer, so close she could feel his breath on her skin. "Because you were the only person who ever saw me," he said softly. "Before everything fell apart. Before you disappeared. And I spent 10 years searching for you." Isabella's heart stopped. Her breath froze. 10 years. He had been searching for her for 10 years. "And now that I have you back," Aleandro said, his voice low, "I will not lose you again." Isabella did not know whether to run or to breathe. But one thing was clear. The truth she was chasing was far more dangerous than she ever imagined. And she was already too deep to escape. Isabella sat in silence, the weight of Aleandro's words sinking deeper into her mind. She had always believed that she was the master of her own fate, that no one could control her life. But now, after everything that had been revealed, she was left questioning everything she thought she knew about herself. Aleandro was right in some ways. She was tied to him, to his world, and no matter how hard she tried to pull away, she kept being pulled back in. Every part of her wanted to scream, to fight, to reject the truth. But she could no longer ignore the facts, no longer deny the connections she had uncovered. She was part of this life, and there was no escaping it. Aleandro had spent years searching for her, and now that he had found her, she felt trapped. The more she learned, the less she understood. She didn't want to be part of his world, didn't want to be part of the dangerous legacy that seemed to follow him. But as much as she fought against it, Something inside her longed for the answers he promised. She was already too deep. The past few days had been a blur. She tried to block out the conversations, the constant pressure, but it was impossible. Aleandro was relentless. He knew everything about her family, everything about the secrets her mother had kept hidden. And as the days passed, Isabella felt like she was losing herself. The mansion, the people, the power, it all seemed so far removed from the life she had known, the life she had fought so hard to build. But it was all slipping through her fingers now, like sand. And Aleandro's words echoed in her head. You belong to me. One night, after another quiet dinner at the mansion, Aleandro found her again. He seemed to always know where to find her, always knew when she was alone. She was sitting on the balcony, the cool night air washing over her, trying to clear her mind. The lights of the city twinkled far below, but they didn't offer any comfort. You've been avoiding me, Aleandro said, his voice smooth, almost soothing. Isabella didn't turn to face him. She wasn't ready to look at him yet. I've been thinking, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. About everything. About what you've said. About what you want from me. Aleandro didn't say anything for a moment, just waited. She could feel him standing behind her, his presence as commanding as ever. And, he asked softly. Isabella took a deep breath. She had to say it, had to confront the feelings that were swirling inside her. I don't know if I can do this, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can live in this world, Aleandro. I can't be a part of this. I can't be a part of you. Aleandro moved closer, his footsteps quiet but certain. She could feel the heat of his body just behind her, could sense the way he was looking at her. You don't have a choice, Isabella, he said, his voice low. You never did. You are mine, and that's never going to change. Isabella clenched her fists, feeling a surge of anger rise within her. She spun around to face him. I'm not yours, she shouted. I'm not anyone's. I don't belong here. I don't belong to you. Aleandro's gaze didn't waver. He didn't flinch at her outburst, didn't seem bothered by it at all. He simply stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. You can't deny it anymore, he said, his voice soft, almost like a whisper. You belong to me, Isabella. And you always will. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run, to escape, but her legs felt like lead, her body frozen in place by the force of his words. She tried to look away, tried to break the hold he had on her, but she couldn't. His presence was overwhelming, and the pull he had on her was undeniable. I can't live like this, she whispered, her voice breaking. I can't live in your world, Aleandro. It's too much. Aleandro reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. You think I want to hurt you? He asked softly. You think this is all just a game to me? Isabella closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. I don't know what to think anymore, she said, her voice barely audible. Everything is a lie. My life, my past. I don't know what's real anymore. It's real, Aleandro said, his voice firm. You're real. This is real. And you will understand everything when you remember. Isabella opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. I don't know if I can remember, she said. I don't know if I want to. You will, he said, his voice softening. I will help you, but you have to trust me. You have to let me in. She felt the tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She was stronger than this, stronger than the emotions that were threatening to break her. She had to be. She couldn't let herself be consumed by him, by this world. Why? She whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Why are you doing this to me? Aleandro's expression softened, but only slightly. He lowered his hands, stepping back just enough to give her space. Because you are mine, he said simply, and I will never let you go. Isabella stood there, frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never felt so powerless, so completely trapped in a life she didn't want. But the more she fought against it, the more she realized that Aleandro wasn't the only one with control over her fate. She had a choice to make. She could give in, let him have her, let him control every part of her life, or she could fight. The problem was, she didn't know if she had the strength to fight anymore. Isabella stood motionless in front of the mirror, her hands shaking slightly as she adjusted the necklace around her neck. The same necklace that had once been a symbol of safety, of her mother's love, now felt like a chain that bound her to a past she couldn't escape. Aleandro's words echoed in her mind. his promises, his demands, his unrelenting presence. You are mine. She had tried to deny it, tried to convince herself that she was still in control, that she could walk away. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. She wasn't just connected to him by blood, by fate, or by the twisted web her life had become. She was connected to him by something more insidious, something that had always been there, buried deep within her. And no matter how much she fought it, no matter how much she tried to escape, she couldn't deny the pull. Aleandro had been right. She did belong to him. The realization stung, but it also brought clarity. She had always been running from the truth, from the pieces of her life that didn't fit into the neat little box she had built for herself. But now, it was impossible to ignore any longer. The past was right in front of her, and no matter how hard she tried, there was no running from it. She was trapped in this world of danger, power, and secrets. And Aleandro had made it clear that there was no going back. He had already claimed her, whether she liked it or not. The door to her room opened, and she turned to see Aleandro standing in the doorway, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight of her. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. Isabella didn't answer right away. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, the pressure building as he waited for her response. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. All she could do was nod. Aleandro stepped inside, his presence filling the room like a storm. "Good," he said, his tone softening slightly. "We're moving forward now. There's no turning back." Isabella swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now," Aleandro said, his voice deep and soothing, "you're going to remember. I'm going to help you unlock the rest of your past." She looked up at him, her heart racing. "I don't know if I want to remember," she whispered. "You don't have a choice," he replied, his eyes locked on hers. "You've already started remembering. You can't stop now." Isabella clenched her fists at her sides, trying to hold herself together. She didn't want to remember. The memories that had come back to her already had been painful enough. But she knew Aleandro was right. She had already crossed the line. There was no going back now. She had to face whatever came next, even if it terrified her. "Where do we start?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Aleandro stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "We start with the truth," he said, his voice low and steady. "The truth about your mother. The truth about you." Isabella felt her heart thud in her chest as Aleandro reached out and touched her shoulder, guiding her toward the door. "Come with me," he said. "It's time to face everything." Isabella followed him, her mind swirling with questions, with doubts, with fears. She wasn't ready for what was coming, but she didn't have a choice. Aleandro had made it clear that her fate was sealed. There was no escaping it. As they walked down the hallway, Isabella felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if she had walked this path before. The house was quiet, the air thick with tension. She didn't know what to expect, but she couldn't deny the fact that something was shifting inside her. She was no longer the person she had been. She was someone else now, someone who was part of this world, part of this family, whether she liked it or not. Aleandro led her to a small room at the end of the hall. The door was heavy, ornate, and it creaked as he opened it. Inside, the room was dimly lit, filled with old bookshelves, a large desk, and a single chair in the center of the room. There was a sense of history in the air, a weight of secrets and memories. Aleandro gestured for her to sit in the chair, and Isabella obeyed, feeling the weight of his gaze on her. "This is where it all started," he said softly, his voice almost reverent. "This is where we will unlock the rest of your memories." Isabella's pulse quickened, but she said nothing. She was afraid of what she might remember, afraid of what she might find. But she knew she had no choice. "I'm ready," she said, her voice shaking, but firm. Aleandro nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "Good," he said. "Then let's begin." He stepped closer, and Isabella felt a shiver run down her spine as his hand rested gently on her shoulder. The world seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of them in that room, surrounded by the weight of their shared history, the weight of the truth that had been buried for so long. Isabella closed her eyes, bracing herself for what was to come. The memories, the pain, the truth. She had no idea what she would find, but one thing was certain. Her life was about to change forever. Isabella sat in the chair, her heart racing as she waited for Aleandro to begin. The room around her felt too quiet, too still, the air thick with tension. She could hear the faint hum of the house, the distant creak of the old floorboards, but it all felt far away. Everything in this mansion seemed designed to overwhelm her, to make her feel small and insignificant in a world that wasn't hers. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, but the weight of the moment was suffocating. Aleandro had promised her that she would remember everything. The truth, her past, and as much as she wanted to deny it, as much as she wanted to push him away and run, she knew she couldn't. She had come too far. The door to the room clicked shut behind her, and Isabella jumped slightly at the sound. She turned to see Aleandro standing there, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the floor. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that sent a shiver down her spine. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his voice low, almost gentle. She nodded slowly, though her insides churned with fear. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice shaky. "You've already started," Aleandro replied, his tone steady. "You can't run from what you are, Isabella. What we are." His words felt like a jolt, a shock to her system. It wasn't the first time he had said something like that, but it hit her harder this time. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face the truth about herself, about her past, but there was no turning back now. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Aleandro stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. "I want you to remember everything. I want you to see the connection, the reason why you're here, why you've always been a part of this world. The world I come from." Isabella's heart pounded in her chest. She felt her breath catch in her throat as memories, fragmented and incomplete, flashed behind her closed eyelids. A woman's voice, a man's shadow, the flash of a gun, the weight of the necklace in her hand, her mother's face, fading in the distance. She opened her eyes and met Aleandro's gaze, her hands trembling at her sides. "I don't want to know," she whispered. "I don't want to remember." "You do," Aleandro said firmly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You just don't realize it yet. The past has a way of catching up to us. And when it does, there's no denying it." Isabella's thoughts swirled, panic rising inside her. She wanted to push him away, to stop this before it got any worse, but she knew that wouldn't work. He was right. She couldn't run anymore. Her past was already here, already tied to this man, to this world. She felt trapped. "What happened to her?" Isabella asked, her voice barely a whisper. "My mother." Aleandro's expression softened slightly, his eyes darkening. "Your mother. She made a choice, a decision that changed everything. She ran because she knew too much, because she saw something she wasn't meant to see. But she took you with her, and that made you a target." Isabella swallowed hard, her throat tight. "She protected me," she said, almost to herself. "She tried to protect you," Aleandro corrected softly. "But in doing so, she dragged you into a life you weren't ready for. She thought she could keep you hidden, keep you safe. But your blood, it's too strong. Your connection to this world, to me, was never meant to be broken." "You keep saying that," Isabella said, her voice trembling with frustration. "You keep saying that I'm a part of this, that I belong to you. But I don't understand. I don't understand any of it." Aleandro's gaze never wavered. "You will," he said softly. "When you remember, you will understand. Everything will make sense." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming her. "You are my responsibility, Isabella. And the moment you came into this world, you were mine. You were always meant to be mine." His words felt like a cold weight pressing down on her chest. She wanted to scream, to break free, but something inside her, a dark, silent part of her, knew he was telling the truth. She was tied to him, to this world, in ways she couldn't escape. The memories she had locked away for so long were starting to return, and with them, the truth. The truth about her mother. The truth about herself. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Aleandro's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "You will stay with me. You will learn everything. And when you do, you'll see that this is where you belong." Isabella felt a cold shiver run down her spine, but she didn't pull away. She had no choice. Aleandro had already claimed her, and she couldn't escape the world he was pulling her into, the world she had always been meant to be a part of. "I'm not ready for this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I ever will be." Aleandro's expression softened, but there was still a coldness in his eyes. "You will be," he said quietly. "In time, you will understand. And when you do, you'll accept your place. You'll accept me." Isabella closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. She didn't want this. She didn't want to accept any of it. But the reality was undeniable. She was already lost, and Aleandro would never let her go. Isabella sat in the grand chair at Aleandro's desk, the weight of everything finally settling in her chest. She had fought so hard to deny it, to run from the life he had drawn her into. But now, there was no denying the truth any longer. The room, filled with the soft hum of the mansion's lights, felt suffocating, closing in on her as if the walls were pressing down to remind her of the choices she had made. Choices she hadn't truly made at all. Aleandro stood by the window, his eyes reflecting the city below, the vastness of it all like a reminder of the world he controlled. Isabella tried to gather her thoughts, but every time she closed her eyes, his words echoed in her head. "You belong to me." She hadn't wanted to believe him, hadn't wanted to accept that her mother's past, her family's past, was tied to him. But here she was, trapped in the mansion that now felt more like a cage than a home. She had been pulled into his world, just as he had promised. And no matter how much she fought, no matter how much she wished it would all just disappear, it was real. "You will remember." The memory of her mother's voice, of her warning, haunted her every moment. Her mother had tried to protect her, tried to keep her away from this world, but in doing so, had unknowingly thrown her into the very heart of it. Isabella wasn't sure how much more she could take. She didn't know how to escape. She had thought she could run, that she could hide in the quiet life she had built for herself. But now, she understood the truth. She had never been in control. Aleandro stepped closer, his shadow falling across her as he looked down at her. His expression was unreadable, as always, but there was something in his eyes now, something softer, yet no less intense. "I know this isn't easy for you," he said, his voice calm, almost soothing. Isabella didn't look up at him, her gaze fixed on her trembling hands. "You think?" she whispered, her voice raw. Aleandro sighed, his fingers brushing lightly over her shoulder. "I never wanted to hurt you, Isabella," he said softly. "But you don't understand. You've always been a part of this world, whether you wanted it or not. Your mother made sure of that." She finally looked up at him, her heart heavy. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked, the question so simple, but it weighed more than anything she had ever asked before. Aleandro's gaze softened, though there was still that unyielding power in his eyes. "You do what you must," he said. "You accept your place in all of this. I can help you understand, help you remember what you've forgotten. I can give you a life, Isabella. A life that's yours, but also ours." Her heart pounded in her chest, and for the first time, she saw the truth in his eyes. She was already his. There was no escaping it. And deep down, a part of her had always known that. He reached out, gently cupping her face in his hand, his thumb brushing against her skin. "You're mine, Isabella. And when you accept that, when you finally understand who you really are, you'll see that this was always meant to be." Isabella closed her eyes, trying to push the tears back. She had never been good at accepting what was handed to her. She had always fought for her own freedom, for her own life. But Aleandro wasn't just any man. He wasn't just anyone who could be ignored. He had a hold on her, a connection that was deeper than anything she could understand. "I don't know if I can accept it," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can be the person you want me to be." Aleandro's eyes searched hers. And for a moment, something softer flickered behind the coldness. "I don't want you to be someone else, Isabella," he said gently. "I want you to be who you are. The person you were always meant to be." She felt her breath catch in her throat. She had no idea who that person was anymore. Was she the woman who had spent years trying to escape her past? Or was she the woman who had been bound to this world from the moment she was born? The answer seemed to come to her all at once. She was both. And neither. She was lost. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what Aleandro wanted. The truth hit her like a wave crashing over her, and before she could stop herself, she stood up. "I don't want to be your possession," she said, her voice shaky but defiant. "I want to be free." Aleandro didn't step back, didn't flinch at her words. He simply reached out and touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tear that had slipped down her face. "You will be free," he said softly. "But freedom comes with a price, Isabella. And you're already paying it." The words sunk deep into her heart, and she realized, with a clarity that both terrified and comforted her, that she had never been free. Not really. Her past had always controlled her. And now, she was bound to Aleandro. To this world she could no longer escape. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Aleandro smiled, his eyes dark with a promise that sent a chill down her spine. "Now," he said, his voice low and full of meaning, "we move forward. Together. And nothing will stand in our way." Isabella felt the weight of his words settle over her, as heavy as the necklace she wore around her neck. The past had always been tied to her, and now, her future was too. She was trapped, but she couldn't bring herself to hate it anymore. Not when she realized that, in some twisted way, this was the life she had always been meant to lead. And so, as she stood in the mansion with Aleandro by her side, she made her choice. She would live this life. She would embrace the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. Because in the end, she was his, and there was no turning back. In a world where secrets and power collide, Isabella finds herself drawn into a dark romance with Aleandro, a man who holds the key to her past and her future. Despite her desire to escape, Isabella soon discovers that her life is far more entwined with the Mafia world than she ever imagined. As the truth about her mother's connection to Aleandro's family is revealed, she faces an agonizing decision, whether to accept the life that has always been her destiny or fight against the dark forces that seek to control her. With each passing day, Isabella's struggle becomes more intense as she grapples with the overwhelming reality of her bond to Aleandro, a bond that pulls her deeper into a world filled with power, danger, and forbidden desire. In this gripping tale of dark romance, Isabella must confront not only her deepest fears, but also her growing feelings for the man who claims her as his own. As secrets from her past come to light, she must decide if she will embrace the life she's been given or fight for her freedom. This dark romance will leave you questioning the boundaries of love, power, and fate. Will Isabella give in to the dark allure of Aleandro's world, or will she escape the chains that bind her? Discover the haunting twists of this dark romance and find out what happens when the line between love and obsession blurs. Through passion, betrayal, and the truth she never wanted to face, Isabella's journey into the shadows of dark romance has just begun.